Folks, welcome back. How y'all doing? This is CCL Sports Cards. It is getting to that time of the season, unfortunately, where minor league baseball is beginning to wind down. But it's a very exciting point in time because this is where you can take a good, long, hard look at some players who have had good seasons and maybe scuffling for the last 30 days, which is what we're going to showcase today. And we are going to tell you about 4 players who have been scuffling. So let's not be all sad about this and look for opportunities as we get deeper into the winter. So if you want to hear about the 4 players, but plus a very special bonus for you longtime subscribers, be sure to keep that tape rolling and let's dig in. Folks, thanks for sticking with me. I am sure you're going to be pleased with this episode. Again, as shared in the intro, we're going to tell you about 4 players who have really scuffled over the last 30 days in minor league baseball. Now, to be eligible for this list, you have to be at least 24 years of age or younger and have had at least 50 plate appearances. Otherwise, you would have been excluded from our list. So, with that said, let's get started with our list of ice-cold players for the last 30 games. And we're going to start off, I thought it'd be fun to talk about somebody who I've been really big on for quite some time. In 20-year-old catcher for the AA Biloxi Shuckers, Jeffersonquero. He's been a longtime fan of mine, and he actually has had a pretty good season as it relates to minor league baseball, being in AA and being 20 years old. But his last 30 days have actually been quite poor, and maybe that could be related to fatigue. I mean, he is a young kid, and this is a long season, and he's played the majority of it. But for his last 30 games, Jeffersonquero has hit a paltry 164. He's walked twice, and he's had 11 Ks. So maybe fatigue is settling in. But with that said, if his prices continue to slide, he may be somebody we're certainly going to take a look at in the winter, but you may want to take a look at him as well. His first Bowman Chrome Autos can be found in 21 Bowman Chrome, and his most recent sale of a Bowman Chrome Auto in PSA 10 was just $76. I find that to be an incredible bargain for a 20-year-old who has had his type of success in professional baseball to this point. Then we're going to come to another, let's call him a channel fave, because he's been on our radar for a little while, and that is Benny Montgomery, Benny and the Jets. Benny and the Jets. Benny has had a pretty decent season for High A Spokane in Colorado's organization. And being that he's 20 years old, we have a lot of time with him. So I'm going to keep him on my radar. And if I do find good bargains over the winter, we will pick him up. And I do love that his card prices continue to slide. And the reason is, part of it, besides the overall cooling in baseball cards, over his last 30 games, Benny has hit just a $179. He did notch 2 home runs, but he had 9 walks, and 30 strikeouts. So maybe he's pressing a little bit, maybe he's fatigued, but 20 in High A, not that bad. And it's pretty clear that some collectors are kind of throwing in the towel on, I think he was the 14th overall pick in 2021, a BGS 9.5 refractor from 2021 Bowman Draft Chrome, just sold for $80 on eBay. And that is dirt cheap for a kid who has this guy's ceiling. Then we're going to come to a player who I've sort of had fun ripping on, and not at his expense, just because I find it interesting how excited people were about this player over the course of the winter, and he has had a really bad first professional season. Of course, I'm talking about Tucker Tolman from the Blue Jays organization. He was their first overall pick, and he's been stuck at low A Dunedin for the entire season, and not without good reasons. He really hasn't had much success. Tucker has hit just 189 over his last 30 games. He knocked in 9 runs, which isn't terrible, but he had 11 walks and 23 Ks. And hitting a $189, I think it's unlikely he gets promoted to High A next year, but he could. Now, with that said, I will actually begin to look at Tucker Tolman's cards because he's still a young kid. You can pick up a PSA 10 of his 2022 Bowman Chrome Draft Auto and PSA 10, for $30. And they are selling routinely for $30. So people have clearly thrown in the towel on Tucker. And it's not to say that I'm going to chase Tucker aggressively because he hasn't had any success. But at $30, you're kind of just paying for the grading fee, and you get a PSA 10, and maybe he bounces back. It's sort of a low risk, because if he goes to 0, who cares? And if he does really well next year, being he's young, you could be looking at a pretty good upside for Tucker Tolman. And for the last player on our board today, we're going to talk about none other than a player who needs no introduction, especially because he's a Pittsburgh Pirate, which is my favorite team. But we're going to talk about Turmar Johnson.
who's currently playing in high A for the Greensboro Grasshoppers. Now, Turmar has actually had a pretty good debut in terms of being a pro. However, for his last 30 days, or more or less since his promotion to high A, he has scuffled a little bit, hitting just 197 over his last 30 games. Now, he did hit 4 home runs, which is encouraging, and more importantly, he's walked 19 times, and he's struck out 23 times, which tells me he's not pressing too much. And it reminds me a little bit of Jason Dominguez, who we cited earlier in the season, who's, since been promoted to the Yankees, and we can argue whether that's too soon, because he's 20 years old. But early in the season, Jason Dominguez's average was atrocious, but he was walking a lot, meaning, he wasn't pressing at the plate. And I think something similar to that could be happening with Turmar. But do keep in mind with Turmar, even though I'm a Bucks fan, there's a lot of bias here, let me tell you. His PSA 10s from 2022 Bowman Chrome or Bowman Draft Chrome are selling for $210. So while we'll keep an eye on him going into the winter, $210 is just a little bit rich for my blood and my investing style. But if you're looking to pick some up and you do like the kid who was, I think he was number 1 or 2 in the draft, then keep an eye on this winter because these last 30 days, he's been cold.
Now, folks, that's it. That's all for our cold list players. But longtime subscribers, I've got a very special bonus for you. You guys know for the last 18 months, maybe even 2 years, I have been pumping the tires on a guy named Thomas Saggese. He's been rising through the minors, and people were saying his strikeouts are too high and yada, yada, yada. He was recently traded to St. Louis around the MLB trade deadline. And while that's not relevant to this conversation, after his trade to St. Louis, he has continued to crush the ball. His numbers are off the charts. Now, I say this not to impress you or to have you go out and buy Saggese cards. I just say it because we've actually begun to unload our Saggeses. We've done very, very well on him, and I think it's time to leave. Now, it's not to say that, his cards aren't going to be worth more down the road, which they probably are, because I believe in the kid. However, we have made plenty of money on his cards, and it's time to sell. The 2 highlights are we sold a PSA 10 orange refractor from 2020 Bowman Draft for $2,100 on eBay, and we were in at a very low price. And we recently just sold a BGS 9.5 True Blue for $670. Both those prices are in Canadian dollars. Folks, I appreciate you all. We're coming up on nearly 2 years of CCL sports cards, and I couldn't be more grateful to all of you who continue to watch the show. I appreciate you. I want to wish you a tremendous week. Stay fit and have fun.
Body break.
I almost said stay fit and have fun. Never mind. I appreciate all of you guys. Have a tremendous week, and be sure to hit that subscribe icon so you know when content like this drops. Take care, guys.